What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Friday, November 11th, 2016. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And, of course, in hour number 3, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us. Happy Veterans Day to everybody, to all of our veterans who are out there who have gone on out and served our country, not always for the best and most noble of purposes, but still, you put on that uniform, you kept your promises, and this is your day to bask in the admiration and respect of your fellow citizens. All right, let's get right here to the good news. Last night we ended the show. I was in a bit of a snit, as it were. My knickers were well and truly twisted over this story that came out in Newsweek about how it might be possible for the electoral vote count to come on out as a tie because there were 3 states that were still stalling to finalize their election results: New Hampshire, Michigan, and Arizona. And if they all went for Hillary and they were able to flip Wisconsin, which was very, very close, then it would be an electoral college tie, and I was very upset at the machinations that were going on. Well, the good news is apparently the Secretary of State of Arizona, their office got flooded with phone calls late in the day, and at end of business day yesterday, they basically came on out, said the election is over, and they officially certified Donald Trump to be the winner of Arizona's electoral vote. So he's now up to 290. New Hampshire certified their election for Hillary, but that's only 4 electoral votes. So the only state still left in play is Michigan, and that's definitely leaning toward Donald Trump as well. So this idea of a tie at the Electoral College is well and truly dead. But now the sore losers are out there trying to push this petition. They put up a petition on the White House petition site to say, force the electors to go with the popular vote. We don't care what the tradition is. We don't care what the laws are. You make them go with the popular vote. And it's gotten 2 million signatures that are probably about as genuine and authentic as much of Hillary's voters were. But again, what's going on here? They're trying to change the rules of the game after the game is already over. I mean, it's like being in Las Vegas and you're sitting at a blackjack table and the dealer has just collected everybody's money, and everybody at the table says, you know something, we've all decided it should be 22. And I'm sure if you tried to do that in Las Vegas, you'd be very, very quickly shown the door. Now, a lot of people are very confused about what this whole difference between electoral votes and popular votes is. So let's have a little bit of a class session. Take notes. There will be a pop quiz next week sometime. And we're going to use a very, very simple model. Now, let us imagine there are only 3 states. Each has just 100 eligible voters and just 1 elector. Now, in State A, Hillary wins 100% of the vote, 100 votes, and she wins 1 elector. In the other 2 states, B and C, Donald Trump wins 51% of the votes for 102 votes total and 2 electors. So the results of this theoretical election is Trump has won 2 electors to 1, thereby winning the presidency, while Hillary had 198 votes to Trump's 101. Now, because this is the way the system works, candidates plan their campaigns to win states by a narrow margin only. Anything more than that is a waste of time and campaign money. But in states that traditionally vote for a particular party, it is common to get large surpluses of unnecessary votes along the way. This is the important part you need to keep in mind as this discussion moves forward. Trump was not trying to win the popular vote. Trump was trying to win electors. Trump won the presidency by the rules everyone is supposed to play by. If this had been a popular vote contest, Trump would have run his campaign very, very differently. Now, the rules are the rules, and a lot of people don't like the Electoral College, and I'm one of them. But at the moment, this is the system we have. And sore losers do not get to change the rules after the game is over just because they don't like the results. Now, to put all of this in perspective, when you add up all the illegal immigrant, stolen my computer, switched my Trump vote to Hillary, and all the dead voters counted up, Hillary had about 200,000 more votes than Trump nationally, or roughly 0.25% of all the votes cast. This is hardly a mandate to just trash the system and go with a knee-jerk reaction. And by the way, somebody's pointed out that roughly 8% of these votes are still uncounted in various states. And these votes are being counted in areas that Trump is heavy in. Hillary might actually lose that popular vote count when it's all said and done. We should hopefully have all of those numbers Monday or Tuesday. Now, today being Veterans Day, government offices are all closed, and nothing is really being accomplished right now. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're spending our first hour talking about politics. Now, there is a website called electoralvote.com, and they are forecasting that Michigan is going to go for Donald Trump, and that ultimately Donald Trump is going to have 306 electoral votes. Now, this is significant because any attempt to have the Electoral College overrule the will of the people is going to require a significant number of electors to become faithless. There's actually a term for it. A faithless elector is one who votes other than his state has mandated. And it's going to take a lot. Now, there have been faithless electors in the past, one here, one there. Getting 10, 20, or 30 to do it, that is a very, very, very tall order. And we may just be seeing John Podesta and the rest of Hillary's staff trying to keep their salaries going just a little bit longer with all of this nonsense. But we're seeing more and more people stand up and say, no, this is nonsense. You don't get to change the rules after the game is over to try and get the result that you want. Let's take 2 phone calls, then we're going to talk about all these anti-Trump protests all over the place. Reed in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What's up, Mike? I just want to say thank you for everything you've done. First of all, you and Claire, you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
And I want to say, I think, we took the first step towards freedom and liberty, but I think we still have to look out for a Trump assassination.
Yes.
And, of course, the riots, which are probably George Soros funded.
We already know that they are. We already know that they are.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you took a look at MSNBC last night, but, Rachel Maddow was talking about how, Trump hacked the elections in conglomeration with Vladimir Putin in Russia. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I have a question for Rachel Maddow. If Trump and Putin were hacking the elections, then how come every detected incidence of election fraud was favoring Hillary Clinton? We've all seen the video where you push the button for Donald Trump and the light for Hillary comes on up. We were getting reports from all over the country this was going on. Some of the more responsible election workers actually took machines out of service when they saw this happening and said, you're going to have to go with a paper ballot. We're not going to allow this to go on. So, I mean, this is completely ridiculous. Now they're going to try and claim that Trump didn't want to win the White House and Putin wanted Hillary Clinton in there when she's talking about war. I know Rachel is supposed to be this mindless media stooge, but sometimes she does abuse the privilege.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll hang up afterwards, but thank you again. But what you think about what the establishment wants to do afterwards and their reaction towards Trump winning. Thank you. And,
all right.
Thank you and Claire as well. So.
All right, thank you very much, and I'll pass that on to her. Obviously, right now, at least for I would say the next week, the establishment is still thrashing around, trying to figure out what's going to go on here. Certainly we're seeing the corporate media trying to recover its reputation, everybody's looking to find somebody else to blame for this disaster and come on out of this with as much of their credibility and reputation intact as possible, it's not really going to work. As to what the establishment itself may be planning, we're going to be getting into that here when we start talking about the rioters. Okay, Jeff in Toronto, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Are you there?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, yeah. Mike, I just had a question about presidential pardons. I'm not sure if you are aware whether or not Obama can pardon himself. And the reason that I ask you that is because when Donald Trump becomes president, it's likely that just previous to that, Obama might pardon like a few people like Hillary Clinton and Loretta Lynch and maybe Eric Holder and Comey. But if I was Donald Trump, I would probably go up to Obama and say, look, if you pardon all these people, then I'm going to go after you. Or if you don't pardon them, then I will let you go. What do you think about that?
Well, it's entirely possible. If Obama felt that he needed a pardon, what he could do is 2 days before the end of his term, step down, make Joe Biden the president on the condition that Biden would issue an immediate pardon. That was the deal that Richard Nixon had with Gerald Ford. So he could get himself a presidential pardon that way. Now, this, of course, looks really, really bad because technically you have to be charged and convicted of a crime before you can ask for or receive a pardon. Unfortunately, Gerald Ford set this precedent of issuing a pardon before anybody was actually charged with Richard Nixon, and Bill Clinton himself did it with John Deutsch. Bill Clinton granted clemency to CIA Director John Deutsch, who was also accused of mishandling classified information prior to any actual charges being filed. Now, there are three things to keep in mind. First of all, issuing a pardon is tantamount to admitting that Hillary and her people are guilty of something that's being covered up. And it's also going to be a black stain on Obama's legacy, which he's not going to be very, very happy with. The second thing to keep in mind is a president cannot pardon a tax obligation. And right now the IRS is examining whether the Clinton Foundation really does qualify as a 501c3 tax-exempt charity. And, of course, they're going to come up and say, no, it doesn't. They didn't spend 51% of their money on charity. It was running as a slush fund. And the IRS is going to demand a full audit of the Clinton Foundation, and the Clintons have no legal grounds on which to refuse. And when they get hit with that tax bill, that's going to turn them into poor people. And there's nothing Obama can do about that, especially if it happens after he leaves office. The final thing to keep in mind is the only thing Obama can pardon Hillary and all their people for are crimes they're suspected of now. If there are subsequent investigations that reveal new crimes, that pardon's not going to apply to that. Trey Gowdy and whoever's going to be the head of the FBI, and I'll send in my resume on that one, could go on out and find other crimes. They could go back and reopen the murder of Vince Foster. Obama can't simply grant a license to somebody saying every crime they've ever committed or ever will commit or ever be charged with in the future, they're forgiven for. That's not going to fly in the current political climate.
And Hillary's got so many crimes coming out of the yin-yang from decades back that she's just toxic everywhere. Like, I wouldn't want to touch her with a barge pole.
She is very, very toxic. I'm sure if Obama is seriously thinking about a pardon, and we are getting indications he is, it is more to protect himself than to protect Hillary. We already know he was tangled up in that Clinton Foundation. He lied about knowing about the private email server. Whatever crimes Hillary committed with that email server, including the selling of U.S. secrets to foreign interests, Obama is technically an accessory to. So he may want to pardon her to protect himself, but, you know, courts could then say, no, your pardon to Hillary doesn't protect you if those crimes come out later on, because presidents really cannot pardon themselves.
Just one last thing I'd like to say before you let me go. I do hope when Donald Trump becomes president in January that he actually does pardon Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and Julian Assange, because I think they could really use his help right now.
They really could, but you need to remember Julian Assange was not charged under U.S. law. So what Trump would have to do is grant Julian Assange asylum in the United States of America, in order to protect him from the legal charges which are coming down from it's either Switzerland or Norway or something like that. I would like
Sweden,
to.
yeah.
I would like Sweden. That's where it is. I would also like to add 2 more names to the pardon list, and that would be Leonard Peltier and Mumia Al-Jabbar.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I want them pardoned. I mean, it was absolutely beyond question that Leonard Peltier was railroaded for a murder somebody else committed. Robert Redford narrated this wonderful movie that was part of the Sundance Film Festival, Incident at Oglala, where they just lay it on out how the FBI just framed this guy and put him away.
Yeah, I'm aware that happened, was it the early 80s or something like that? And
yeah.
I think he went to Canada and then they sent him back or something like that?
Well, he went to Canada and then he voluntarily came back because 2 of the other defendants in the case had been acquitted, and he thought he was going to be acquitted, but the FBI wanted to have a trophy on the wall on this issue, and Leonard got chosen. And it was clearly a frame-up job from beginning to end. And he's getting on in years. I don't think it's right, especially considering that he was framed, that he should have to die in prison. I think it's time for him to come on home and be with his family for his remaining few years. And I think that's very reasonable. And I certainly would like Donald Trump to consider
a guy to do something like that.
Would be very, very reasonable. Now, he's going to get opposition from the long-term career FBI, but from what I'm hearing already, we can expect a major reshuffling and a bringing in of new blood to Washington, D.C., to the point where the voice is screaming, you got to keep Leonard Peltier locked up because you can't make the FBI look bad. It's not going to get much traction because at this point, I don't think Donald Trump, after what he's seen the FBI do with regard to the Clintons, he doesn't care if the FBI is going to look bad. If they get a black eye in the public view, he may think it might actually be good for the FBI to have a good dose of humbling right now, and I would certainly agree with that as well.
Their reputation's in the toilet right now, so I don't think they're in the position right now to be critical of anyone. You ask me. But I just want to say thank you, Mike. I mean, you're you know your stuff, and I'm very impressed with you, but I also wanted to publicly thank you for all the hard work that you've done over the several months in supporting Donald Trump, and you're just a great guy, and just keep it up the fight, man. I really love you. All
right, well, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go here. And again, I want to be clear on this. I'm not 100% happy with Donald Trump. This was mostly about not letting Hillary get into that White House and continue this Bush-Clinton duopoly, duocracy, narcocracy, whatever it was. And I was joking earlier in the year. If the election had come down to Hillary Clinton versus Godzilla, the lizard would have gotten my vote. So, yes, I'm a Trump supporter. I would have supported Bernie Sanders. I did support Bernie Sanders against Hillary in the nomination. But I'm just very, very glad that at least so far, the tentacles of the Bushes and the Clintons are out of the White House, although we understand they're already grooming Chelsea for a run for Congress so that they can get back into power. And I think that would be a very, very good reason for all of the Clinton crimes and corruptions to come on out. Now, I don't believe in punishing the children for the crimes of the parents, but the read I get is that Chelsea, having been raised by Bill and Hillary, it is very much like them, and that's a danger to the American people here. All right, we're going to grab another phone call. Glenn in Virginia, and we're probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Mike, thanks for all your work. Is the issue with New Hampshire and Arizona, in your opinion, put to rest? Take it off the air. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, Arizona, as of end of business yesterday, declared their election over. They certified for Donald Trump. New Hampshire did for Hillary Clinton, which is a surprise in a GOP state. But somewhere down the road, we'll probably find out that there was a lot more vote fraud going on. But as of right now, Newsweek's suggestion that they could somehow manufacture a tie in the electoral votes, that is now hopelessly beyond reach. And so now we just need to go on and find out, are they going to try and hijack the Electoral College, or are they going to try and scare us all into installing Queen Hillary with all the rioting in the streets? And we're going to be talking about that when we come back from these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And let us now talk about these riots that are going on. And that's what they are being called. Up in Portland, they had another one of these anti-Trump rally, we don't care what the rest of America wants, give us Hillary or we will do bad things to you. And basically, the police are calling it a riot. They're calling them anarchists. They were throwing objects at officers. They vandalized local businesses and damaged cars. Because, after all, love trumps hate, right? Now, where this is all going wrong for Hillary and her people is that these riots, the vandalism, the defacing of public monuments, the attacks on journalists, the looting, are presenting a public image of Hillary supporters that the people are not going to find any sympathy with, let alone support. Everyone is now seeing that Hillary's constituency is the criminal class. Illegal immigrants, people connected with the CIA's drug trade, not to mention everybody who eagerly participated in massive election fraud. This is going to backfire horribly on Hillary because these violent protesters are turning public opinion against her and her effort to steal the White House back from Trump. And even Trump figured this out because earlier in the day, he was denouncing the protests as being started by provocateurs and fanned by the media, which is true. And then later in the day, he said, oh, well, let them go do what they're going to do. Because he knows the more out of control the violence gets, the better it's going to be for him and the worse for Hillary. Paul Joseph Watson agrees. He's got an article out there today. Each time another shop window gets smashed, it proves Trump was the right choice. Now, a photojournalist, this is somebody with war experience, been in combat. Kyle Ludowitz was trying to cover the riots in Oakland, California, and he was basically attacked by these Hillary supporters who beat him up and put him in the hospital and destroyed $5,000 worth of camera gear. This is the new public image of the liberals. And it's not going to win them any points with that corporate media when they behave like this. Apparently, Planned Parenthood is funding some of these Stop Trump campaigns and protests. Boy, do you remember when it was the Democrats demanding that Donald Trump gracefully accept the results of the election? Boy, that seems like such a long time ago. All right, let's get a couple of phone calls out of the way. Riley in Kansas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Nice show, and thanks for staying with us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on that Newsweek. I think that article was actually spiked because my opinion is this. Anybody who runs for the state house or state senate or any state office within those states can call for that election results to be upheld. So for them to say that it was strictly upheld because Hillary was going to make some sort of a challenge to it is, I think, just pure hype on their behalf to alarm the people.
Well, it was trying to sell the idea that this election was not really over, until Hillary is able to change the rules so that she could claim victory. But, we're seeing the machinery of Washington, D.C., and even the vast majority of the corporate media are basically acting like they have accepted Trump's presidency. And it's just a few small holdouts, stragglers, whatever, that are out there with this nonsense about the Electoral College and other doom and gloom that might be coming.
Yeah, and the other observation I'd like to make is nobody other than David Clark there in Milwaukee is doing anything against any of these protesters or rioters or the people that are getting killed, like those that were shot in Seattle, and these programs going on and on and on, and nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, whether they have to declare martial law or whatever, somebody needs to stand up here and make an example, and we don't have apparently one brave soul willing to do that.
Well, again, if there is a larger agenda at work, they want these riots to go out of control. And we've talked about this before, back when they were trying to fan up race riots and everything, that Obama would love nothing better than riots across the country so he could declare a national emergency and maybe That's where this is going. Riley, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to do a break for commercials. I'm going to talk more about this when we get back from these words from our sponsors. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we go back to the phone lines here, I want to get some more news and information in for you. Anybody who's out there saying Donald Trump has chosen X to be this position or that, I mean, first of all, the rumors are flying, and I don't think anything's final. And we're already seeing that Donald Trump is capable of realizing he's made a mistake and making changes. And he's already done, according to this story that's just now breaking, apparently Donald Trump has done the "you're fired" to Governor Chris Christie, who was in charge of the transition team, and now Vice President-elect Mike Pence is now the new head of the presidential transition team. And Trump, so obviously a lot of people were concerned that rumors were that Trump was going to load up his cabinet and his administration with some old guard neocons, but a lot of that is being put out by people who want those positions in his cabinet and are trying to build some public momentum for that. But this story tells us that we should not really be taking any claims about what Trump's administration is going to be at face value until after Inauguration Day, because he's already shown he's willing to make changes if he doesn't think the people he's got are willing to do the jobs that they're supposed to. Now, so what's going on with all the protests? Very clearly, this is not going to help the public image of the Democratic Party or the liberals. What's going on? A lot of people are very concerned that these riots are being fanned up and allowed to get out of control for some purpose. One is to allow Obama to declare a national emergency and basically freeze the transition where it is right now. There's another article that came on out at strategicculture.org taking note of how both Bill and Hillary Clinton, during her concession through gritted teeth speech the other day, were both wearing purple, which is equated with an imperial color. Now, the Clintons are saying it was just meant to be a blending of red and blue as a message to come together, and maybe that's all it was. But we do know that George Soros, who clearly is not ready to give up on any of this stuff, he is behind many of these so-called color revolutions, and we have been hearing the phrase, the Purple Revolution, applied to the United States in the back chatter for quite some time. So there's an area of concern. And Paul Craig Roberts is out there sharing that concern, saying the anti-Trump protesters are tools of the oligarchy who are still trying to figure out some way that they can recover from this disaster of their own making. They're clearly not ready to give up, and we have to be very, very vigilant about what they're doing. Apparently, ads are already going up in Craigslist for full-time activists to protest against the Trump presidency. They're being bought and paid for. Now, there's a YouTube video, and this one really is a great one. Somebody went on out to these anti-Trump protesters to do interviews and say, why are you protesting against Donald Trump? And they just stand there and say, just like we saw with a lot of the Ferguson protesters. Why are you out here protesting? Just kidding. You know, it's not like they could stand there and say, well, I'm getting paid $18 an hour to stand here and, call Donald Trump bad names. Meanwhile, up in Seattle, a declared socialist councilwoman, Kshama Sawant, is now demanding that there be mass riots and protests to disrupt Trump's inauguration. Talk about sore losers. All right, let's get some more phone calls out of the way here. Steve in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I just want to make a statement to those people. It's we came, we saw, she died.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, she's not dead yet, and we got to get out the garlic and the wooden stakes and all the rest of that stuff.
But it bothered me what she said about Gaddafi. To Katie Couric or something like that.
Oh yeah, that was one of the things that really revealed what her true personality is all about. She thinks this is all great fun to go in and wreck other people's countries. not to mention wrecking our own. That was one of the big reasons I was so opposed to Hillary. It was a continuation of this war fever that was leading us into a disaster.
But and then she had to say at that concession speech, well, I won the popular vote. Just to stir people up. Obama needs to get out there and make a statement to these people. Really, ideally, she said she'd help out Trump. What she needs to do is get out there and tell them to settle down.
Well, what everybody needs to do, what everybody listening to the show needs to do, is anytime somebody says, well, Hillary won the popular vote, you just say, yeah, with what, 1.8 registered dead people and, a 500,000 illegal immigrants who are not supposed to be voting. And the other thing is, our system, whether you like it or not, our system is not about the popular vote. It's about electors. And Donald Trump won the presidency playing by the rules everyone agreed to play by ahead of time. And now Hillary wants to...
They're not reasonable.
No, of course they're not reasonable. They're power-mad, money junkies. They're capable of anything with a capital A to try and hang on to power. And we're going to have to just keep a really close eye on them from now all the way through the inauguration itself to try and basically, keep open this opportunity for a better future for our country.
These protesters, 90% of them, I'll bet you, they really don't have any idea why they're out there. And Ryan Dawson came up with a name for this identity politics, identitarians. I had to laugh about that.
Oh, that is a good one. I like that. Good for Ryan on that one. But, we know that a lot of these protesters are these illegal immigrants who were promised if they could get across the border into the U.S., they'd be allowed to stay and they'd be allowed to register to vote, which is illegal. And if they voted for Hillary Clinton, which was illegal, and they voted multiple times for Hillary Clinton, which is illegal, that they would be given amnesty and allowed to stay and become U.S. citizens. And now they're realizing that's not going to happen, and they're genuinely angry. And I got to tell you, I get a real chuckle out of seeing all these illegal immigrants marching around with their signs that read, Trump is not our president. And you know something? They're absolutely right. Enrique Pena Nieto is their president. Go back to him.
How about Obama telling that girl that he knew she was illegal, and she said, well, he told her, don't worry, you could still vote. Nothing will happen to you. They won't come after you. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did, but once Trump is in office, yeah, they're going to go after them. They're going to go after them. And, if we're going to rebuild this country, just like a businessman, we need to magnify our assets and reduce our liabilities, and this huge influx of illegal immigrants and refugees is a serious liability for our economy, and it's time to do something about it. Now, the good news is Trump may not even need to build his wall, because we're now hearing that the illegal immigrants are saying they're not even going to try and come into this country while Trump is in the White House because they know they're not going to get anywhere.
Well, that'll be good. Save a lot of money, but we got to be careful we don't get our hopes too far up with Trump, like too soon, and expect too much, because he can only. But I think it's going to be wonderful, Mike. I really do.
No, you were about to say there's only so much he can do, and you're absolutely right, which is why we, the American people, our job is not over when Trump goes into the White House. It's just beginning. We're going to have to literally grab the government in our own hands and stand shoulder to shoulder with President Trump and shake the thing up and say, look, you work for us. You don't work for the refugees. You don't work for the illegal immigrants. You don't work for Israel. You don't work for big pharma and corporations in Wall Street. You work for we the people, or we're going to do to you what we just got done doing to Hillary Clinton next election. And we need to do that. But we've got the opportunity to actually make some serious changes here.
Yeah, and we haven't had this opportunity ever before. Nobody would work with us, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, I'm going to let you go. We got a lot of phone calls, and I got a lot of news to get through here. So we're going to go to Tom in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yeah, I was thinking that, people, especially on the left, they envision when Trump gets into office, they're going to go like stormtroopers door to door asking for IDs to find illegal aliens. They'll simply cut off federal protection and handouts, and then we'll just hear a giant sucking sound back to Mexico.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's very expensive to do door-to-door stormtrooper tactics. All Trump has to do is enforce the border. And, this is something people need to remember. Okay, President Dwight D. Eisenhower absolutely closed down that border with Mexico with only 10% of the current manpower that is employed by ICE and INS. And the only reason they haven't been closing the border is they've been told not to, and they've been reassigned to basically be babysitters and escorts for this flood of immigrants that are coming on in. But, yeah, you start shutting off all social services to anybody who cannot prove they're a citizen, and they're going to be heading back across that border. No welfare to non-citizens, no food stamps to non-citizens. America has to be for the American people.
And as far as a situation where they say, oh, what about the children? They're automatically American citizens. Well, who says that? We're going to divide up families, and I like the saying, just because kittens are born in an oven doesn't make them biscuits.
I like that. That's very, very good. Well, most countries do not have that idea of birthright citizenship. That was something that kind of came around back when we were trying to build our population of workers during the heyday of immigration to the United States. But even then, there was still vetting. They only let people into this country who were going to be a benefit to the economy, who had necessary skills, who had a good work ethic, who had an education, who were going to come on in and help grow America and its industry and its culture. And that's a good model. I'm not saying close off the borders. We always want people to come to this country, but we want them to be people who will benefit our society, not MS-13 and drug criminals and rapists and people carrying highly contagious diseases. We have a right to stop them at the border. It's not even just a right. It's common sense.
And they got to love the principles of freedom and love the American people. And
just as Theodore Roosevelt said, if you're going to come live here, you play by our rules, you learn our language, we'll respect your culture and your language and your religion and everything, but when you're interacting with the rest of the country, you're in this country. Act like it. Don't go around saying you must learn our language, you must reshape all your buildings to our architecture and everything. That's just rude. That's just very rude behavior.
Yep. Well, thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to James in Tokyo. Ohayou gozaimasu. O genki desu ka? What's on your mind today?
Ohayou gozaimasu. Am I on the air? Am I talking to Steve McGarrett?
You're on the air and you're talking to Michael Rivero. And we got a horrible echo. I don't know where that's coming from. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. First, I want to talk about Christie. The thing with Christie is he was put on tape talking bad things about Trump. Trump's a tough MF, and he's not going to forget about it, and that's why he's gone. And I just hope that Mr. Pence is another LBJ.
Well, here's we got a problem with this phone line. I'm going to have to let you go here. I'm going to respond to what you just said. James, thank you very much. We're going to drop the line here. The fact is that Chris Christie was originally chosen to lead Donald Trump's transition team, and Donald Trump recognized that whatever Chris Christie was planning on doing wasn't going to work for him. And that probably included Chris Christie pushing certain individuals on Donald Trump for positions in the administration that Donald Trump doesn't want to be there. So I don't think it was an issue about Chris Christie having said bad things about Trump before. I think it was an issue of Christie's job performance. And I think having a president who's willing to fire non-performing members of the administration, that's going to be a refreshing change. And we're going to actually see some stuff get done. We're going to actually see that White House return to being a meritocracy. All right, let's see. James in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. I would say good afternoon, but I guess it's still morning there in Hawaii, isn't it?
Just slightly. About another 10 minutes, and it will be lunchtime.
This looks like it's going to be the fourth time in history that there's been a split between the popular vote and the electoral vote. I did a little bit of research on that, and that oddly enough, the Democrats have come out on the short end every time. Then I had been doing some thinking about the situation, if there could be anything to solve that problem that might occasionally crop up.
It's not a problem. It's not. Listen to me. It's not a problem. Okay. The candidates were not.
It is to some people.
Well, let me explain why these people are wrong. We have a certain way that we run our presidential elections, and not everybody agrees with it. And by the way, I'm one of those. I don't think the Electoral College is a really good idea. It was actually put in to allow the politicians to override a populist candidate who was unqualified for the office. But it's still anti-democratic. But right now, for this election, for 2016, these are the rules everybody agreed to play by, and the rules say you are out to win electors, not a popularity contest. And Donald Trump won by the rules that everybody plays by, and now Hillary and the rest of the sore losers are screaming and crying, saying, you've got to change the rules so that we can win. And again, her margin in the popular vote is only 200,000, 0.25% of all the people who voted. And until you are able to tell us how many of those votes were legitimate versus illegal immigrants, convicted felons, the dead voters, and all the machine fraud, we actually don't know for certain what her popular vote count was. We know there was massive, massive fraud, and from that I would probably conclude that Hillary's real popular vote numbers are anywhere up to 1 million below what we're being told that they are.
I would agree with you on that. Now, but assuming there is an accurate popular vote count, let me
irrelevant. It's irrelevant under the rules. If they had gone like January and said, we're going to get rid of the Electoral College, this is going to be a straight popular vote, then both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump would have run their campaigns differently to get the maximum number of popular voters. They ran their campaigns to win the electors, and Donald Trump won. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much for the call, James. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we go back to the phone lines here, a couple of quick stories. Remember the day after the election when there was this Muslim female student at the University of Louisiana who claimed that her hijab had been ripped off and her wallet stolen by two white men wearing Trump hats. And it got played all over. See, this is what Trump's America's going to be. How could you have voted this? As of right now, the Lafayette Police Department is saying it was a complete hoax. It was a hate crime hoax. This liberal just made it up out of thin air. And they're saying there is no investigation. There are no two white guys with Trump hats that are being sought. And the liberals are saying, but you're supposed to believe her. She's a woman. She's a minority. You're supposed to believe her. You're not supposed to question her. Now, Soros has hit a bit of a road bump because, remember, down in Dallas, Texas, these Soros-funded Black Lives Matter protests resulted in the death of a lot of people, including a police officer. Soros and Black Lives Matter are now being sued for $550 million. So, all right, let's go back to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, you know, when I called yesterday about the buses in Texas, there must be about 20 buses. So this is just the beginning, Mike, because to put this much money into all those buses to pack them full, these people are going to go all the way to Inauguration Day, including there, because there's been pamphlets being handed out looking for, protesters to be there to go to this website and stuff. So
yeah, this is definitely an organized effort. This is definitely an organized effort.
And you're right. This is the Purple Revolution because it's the same
playbook they used in Ukraine twice.
Yes.
And Syria.
And Syria and Iran in 1953 and Chile in 1973 and on and on and on and on. Now they're going to do it here because they're just sick and tired of this democracy nonsense.
Well, what happens if they start arming these people, Mike? Like, I mean, these people are, not all of them, but there's a percentage.
Wait a minute. Wait, a minute. A liberal know how to use a gun? Are you crazy?
Well, at least they won't have to worry about no witnesses.
Oh, my goodness!
Well,
yeah.
I mean, this is just it's a bizarre thing. You know, I thought that color what she was wearing was bizarre. That purple. It just seemed very odd.
We're coming up on the top of the hour and the station break here, and I just want to point something out. Have you noticed that Hillary Clinton has not come out making any statements for these protesters to calm down and stand down? Not a single word from her at all on this issue. And that is very telling. Dustin, thank you for the call. We're going to let you go, take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we go back to the phones here, WikiLeaks deservedly is getting a lot of attention for the information they have been putting out about the Clinton crimes and corruptions and just how widespread this culture of corruption has spread through our entire government. But they're not the only players out there. There have been a lot of people leaking, and people may have forgotten that the internal emails from the Democratic National Committee, which blew the whistle on the fact that they were rigging the primaries for Hillary Clinton, came from another group entirely called DC Leaks. Well, they've just done another huge data dump, emails from a lot of people, including Huma Abedin and the Podesta brothers. People are already starting to go through that and looking for pay dirt. We already know that Monsanto was a big donor to the Clinton Foundation. A lot of dirt is coming on out, and we need to get it on out there and really inform America what's been going on, because we still have a large number of people who are going around absolutely convinced that what they're being told by the corporate TV news media is reality, and it isn't. And I got into a discussion with somebody last night about, oh, Trump is terrible. ABC told me and all the rest of this. And I came up with a very simple thing. Do you remember how the Nazis used radio and newspapers to lie to their people, tell them how wonderful those in power were, get them to go along with the wars? And they said, yeah, of course I remember that. I said, do you remember how the Soviet Union used the newspapers and radio and even TV to lie to their people about how wonderful those in power were and get them to go along with the government agenda? So, yeah, I remember this. On what basis do you think this government is any different? Long silence out there. All right, let's see. We're going to go back to the phones here. Mike in Maryland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. You know, I was just thinking, I really feel sorry for Hillary Clinton. It's really a shame. She took a bail to Obama in 2008 so he could become president, and now it's her turn, by God. And so I think...
Are you on drugs? I'm sorry.
Not quite. I'm being facetious here.
Oh, I would certainly hope so. I was about ready to hit the drop button on you. I have no sympathy for Hillary Clinton, and she.
Trust me on this.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
Okay, I think Trump should be magnanimous towards Hillary Clinton and offer her a job as an administration, as ambassador to Syria
or Libya.
Or Libya.
Yeah, ambassador to Libya. You know something? I actually agree with you on that one. Hillary for ambassador to Libya. I love that.
Okay, that's it. Keep up the great work.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Elizabeth in Connecticut. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, hello?
You're on the air.
Hello?
You're on the air.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about this cultural invasion that's happening. I know you touched on it, both in Europe and here. And, it's all about the numbers and demographics, because I think these globalists are searching for kind of world rule that is communist in its makeup.
Yes.
And then just, the top. So, European people just don't like that. And so they're trying to replace our population. I mean, you see this anti-white wave right now. So many people are being attacked just for being Trump supporters, kids, adults. It's really insane. I mean, I came from California, and that state is no longer American. It's completely and totally invaded. It's virtually part of Mexico now.
Well, what's going on? What's going on with the globalists is they're trying to blur all of the various peoples of planet Earth together, mix them all together, to destroy any sense of a cultural or regional or historic identity. They're also attacking our history. Look at the campaign against the Confederate flag. Oh, you can't remember that. Because people who have a strong sense of self and identity and their place in the world are much more difficult to control than people whose sense of place is so muddied they're just grateful to be told where they're supposed to go next week. And that's a big part of it. And it isn't that they want to replace the white population in the United States. They simply want to dilute them to where there is no basis for a majority of a formation of any kind of a political movement against the globalists. And it's backfired horribly in Europe. It's backfiring horribly here because, again, I go back to this. The entire liberal political philosophy is based on an intellectual fraud that it is possible to re-engineer the human mind by re-engineering the environment around them. This came all the way out of Margaret Mead and Coming of Age of Samoa, and the liberals still lionize her as this great intellectual, and her book was a complete fraud. And that's why so many of their problems keep just cratering, because they're coming from a false prime assumption. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. We're taking phone calls and talking about politics and liberalism, and at the moment, the New World Order desire that no nation have a contiguous indigenous population, but everybody be blurred all together. And Donald Trump is definitely not in favor of that. He's not going along with that. And that's one of the reasons they were so opposed to him.
Yeah, the other point I wanted to make is about the Electoral College. And I know it's not, quote-unquote, democratic, but, I mean, democratic is basically mob rule. And if we didn't have the Electoral College, people in the rural parts of the country would be ruled over by New York and California. So in a way, it protects the rural people. And then the other small point I wanted to make, did you notice, like, that comedian Lena Dunham made a video about a week ago? It was literally about the extinction of white man.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
And and then there's this Professor Noel Ignatieff, if anybody wants to go on YouTube. I mean, he literally talks about, like, I just don't get these people. It's insane. And one other point is that don't send your kids to college right now. It's really toxic on them. Send them to trade school. Make them learn how to make something with their hands, because they're messing with our children's brains.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, you go to college, it's the most rigid defender of the liberal orthodoxy. They're plunging these kids $50,000-$60,000 into student loan debt to learn things like interpretive dance and art history, none of which they're ever going to find a decent job on. Well, maybe the dancers will go over and work at the strip clubs or something, but they're not really creating people to be functioning productive members of society. They're simply conditioning a future political base. And unfortunately, we're now seeing it down in the public school system, where apparently teachers have been just filling these kids' heads full of all these horrible things that were going to happen if Trump won the election. And now that Trump has won the election, the kids are all flipping out and they're going hysterical, and the teachers don't know what to do. They're probably shoving more antidepressants at them or something at this point. But it's, our educational system is not about education. It's about indoctrination. And we're seeing the backlash from it because, again, it's all based on liberal ideology, which is itself founded on an intellectual fraud. And that's why they keep trying this stuff, and it keeps failing, but nobody has the courage to go back and say, you know something, maybe people are born with certain inherent qualities and traits and abilities built in that are not subject to tinkering from outside.
Yeah, and there's one last point, if you don't mind, that I feel, I've felt in my life. There's a toxic third-wave feminism is not only harmful to the men around us, it is very and extremely harmful to the women, because these women end up wasting their lives on these weird careers and not thinking about having a family, and then they end up being, 50 or 40 and whatever with no children, and they've left nothing behind. And that's the most beautiful thing that a woman can do, is leave a legacy of the next generation. And this feminism stuff is, I would say, if there is some kind of global thing, this is just very toxic and harmful, and I think that we've lived long enough with this cultural Marxism in our country. We can't take it any longer.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of that here. I would strongly recommend you hunt down a book called Who Stole Feminism by Christine Hobbs Sommers. And Christine is herself a feminist, but she became a feminist back when it was still equity feminism, equal pay for equal work, equal access to credit, equal access to education, things we could all get behind, things that we all thought was a good idea. And her book chronicles how feminism was hijacked in the 1990s and turned into this militant gender feminism of male bashing and screaming that all men are rapists, and actually trying to turn women back into a victim culture, a victim class, running and hiding all the time because the evil male rapists were going to come on out and do things to them. And it got seriously out of control. And Christine Hobbs Sommers wrote a very, very good book on how this all came down. And it's definitely worth looking at.
Thank you very much, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, as far as the Electoral College goes, if you had just based on a popular vote, these elections would be run a different way. There would be more of an attempt to go to more areas of the country and go after every vote rather than to single out certain states that they call battleground states and all that. That's the only thing. Trump would have still won, and probably won by an even bigger landslide had that happened. The only thing is this: if we're going to change it, before they change it, it has to be a constitutional amendment anyway. What they need to do is make sure that everybody who votes has a picture ID, no excuses, no nothing. Everybody who's registered has to prove their citizenship as when they register to vote. And then I could go for it, because California especially is one of the worst when it comes to illegal aliens voting. The rolls of the dead people are still on the rolls. Non-citizens are voting. They're getting licenses, and Jerry Brown, of course, is one of the worst dirtbags probably in as far as governors in the whole country. So that's got to change if they're ever going to bring back. Meanwhile, Trump has won this fair and square. Most of the states, the vast majority of states in Middle America, favor him. I think by the time this is over, he's going to get. You were worried yesterday that they're going to try to steal on the electoral that he didn't get some of these votes. Well, Arizona yesterday came out, definitely said that Trump won.
Yeah, we reported that at the very top of the show there. And, our Constitution is definitely 200 years old, and it was written at a time before telegraph, before radio, before TV, before the Internet, and there are probably a lot of areas where it needs improvement. The issue I have is that the candidates agreed to play by a certain set of rules, in that this campaign is all about winning electors, not the popularity contest. And now that Hillary has lost, she's out there with her supporters trying to say, well, you should change the rules so I can claim victory. But again, when you look at an estimated 1.9 million dead people registered to vote, tens of thousands of illegal immigrants voting using those dead people's registrations, 60,000 felons who were pardoned in order to give them their voting rights to go and vote for Hillary Clinton. We don't actually know how many votes Hillary Clinton got from legal American citizens alive and able, to vote properly. We don't know. So it's ridiculous to argue that she won the popular vote when there's absolutely no trust in this election system itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, especially states like California, New York, and for them Illinois, where there's nothing but corruption going on when it comes to voting. So, I'm as far as, by the way, these people calling for violence and all, they would, if you ever got to true Americans coming out there and say enough is enough, they would put that resurrection down so quickly, because these people, like you said, these people don't even know how to handle a gun, okay, let alone do anything else. They would get slaughtered. And the other thing is, too, in the old days, and hopefully when Trump becomes president, it's going to happen again, illegal aliens wouldn't dare go out there in the street and riot and demonstrate. They would be too afraid of La Negra coming out there and scooping them up. And that's what you need to have done. You need to have the Border Patrol or the immigration officers out there, and as soon as they start, they should start rounding them up and seeing, are you here, and sending them back to, I don't know, wherever they come from, Mexico, Central America, wherever. That's another thing. But you don't have that anymore. Now that they're not even fearful anymore of getting caught, because Obama said the other day, basically encouraged them to go and vote.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a government made up of criminals. Both the Bushes and the Clintons go all the way back to the CIA's Operation Screwworm, which was this illegal gun and drug running smuggling operation into Nicaragua, and the U.S. end was in Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton. Well, if you have a criminal government, you develop a society that's very tolerant of crime, where the laws are only applied to the little people to keep them obedient servants, paying the bills and breeding more workers and children. And around them, you have this culture of crime and corruption where people think it's okay to go on out and behave this way. That's one of the really scary things about this entire campaign, is just how many American citizens were perfectly comfortable going along with trying to steal this election on behalf of Hillary Clinton. And it almost makes me ashamed to be an American.
You know what else I don't understand? I don't stand a lot of Black America.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. In any event, we're really short on time, and I got to get through a few more phone calls. Then we're going to close the lines and get back to the news leading up to the top of the hour and the lovely Lady Claire. So let's go to Bob in Brooklyn. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I want to congratulate you. People like you and the rest of you guys. Payback is a Hillary, like you said yesterday.
Yes.
Number two, I hope Newsweek doesn't throw away all those magazines.
I'd sure like to get my hands on one of those. I want to get one of those. I want to get one of those for Donald Trump so he can do the Truman pose with it. That's what I want.
He's got one. He'll frame it up in his office.
Yes.
But what I want to say is, Hillary's going to need wallpaper for her jail cell. What do you think of that?
Oh, that would be the perfect thing. Yeah, paper her cell with those covers and everything. Just let her, stew in her own rage and frustration. But again, I think the best of all possible punishments for any of these money junkies is to make them poor people and force them to live just like we have to. And that is a punishment worse than prison, worse than death. And I think that's where we need to focus this
maybe
time.
they make a door catcher of Mayberry, for all I care. Okay, my main thing to ask you, do you know about the Podesta email from, guess who, Bernie Madoff?
No, I was not aware of that one. Please enlighten us.
Okay. I'll tell you what I read. I got it. I could read it for you, but it doesn't matter. It's an authenticated email that he sent in March of last year. Guess who? To Podesta, trying to cut a deal. Turns out Bernie's got money hidden away, $70 million. And he knows he can't get out of jail. He's only asking for 1% in the email. He wants to make a deal with Podesta. Come over and see me. We could iron things out.
Oh, you need to send that to me. You need to email that to me right now and put that out there.
How to do that?
I
send a copy. Yeah, it's a one-page thing.
I'll tell you what. I'll hunt it down. I'm sure it's out there in other places, and what I can do is, if this is one of the WikiLeaks releases, I'll use their search engine to find it. Anyway, listen, Bob, we're coming to a commercial break, so I'm going to have to let you go here. And we're going to put the rest of the calls into the next segment, and then we're going to close the phone lines because I got a bunch of news. It is amazing to see the blame-shifting regatta well and truly underway. Everybody is pointing fingers every other way, trying to put the blame for this turn of events on somebody else, trying to recover from all of this blatant support for Hillary Clinton that has now been exposed as a fraud from beginning to end. And there are some people who are trying to seriously analyze what's going on. And Bernie Sanders is saying it's really simple. Trump won because the Democratic Party failed working people and betrayed its own rank-and-file voters. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And one thing we have to be careful of, even though the election is over, and in the context of Hillary's people still holding out hope that they can somehow reverse the will of the American people through riots or, bribing the Electoral College or anything, there is a lot of bogus news being put on out to try and harm Trump's image before he even gets into that White House. Story came on out about how Donald Trump has said he's going to reopen the 9/11 investigation. We'd all like to see that. But Trump is not dumb enough to make that announcement before he's inside the White House and fully protected. But there's a lot of junk that's going on out there, and we have to be very, very careful because they're still planting hoax stories to try and make Trump look bad about how Trump is still secretly going to be giving Israel everything they want, blah, 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 blah. Okay, back to the telephones. Janet in Kansas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about Dodd-Frank. I mean, you had a little article that I understand that they're talking about renegotiating Dodd-Frank, which will eliminate bailouts, of course, of big banks.
Well, actually, they're talking about an outright repeal. They're talking about an outright repeal and going back to Glass-Steagall.
Well, the other thing that I understand they're talking about is if they keep Dodd-Frank in some form or other, it will allow for bail-in, which is what Deutsche Bank is going through. Bail-in is wherein the bank can seize the deposits and a shareholder's equity. That means if you're banking with Wells Fargo or somebody like that and they go down, they can come and take your deposits out of your checking account, savings account.
Yes, because the Congress, the Congress about, I think it was 2 years ago, Congress came on out and legally redefined a bank savings account holder from being a customer to being an unsecured investor in the bank, meaning you are now expected to share in their losses, which is a good reason to take all your money out of the bank right now. But the big part of Dodd-Frank, the big part was that it basically repealed Glass-Steagall, which was first passed back during the Depression of the 1930s when Wall Street allowed investment banks and depositor banks to be owned by the same company, which opened up the possibility of the investor bank engaging in high-risk speculation with depositor funds, which is a big part of what led to the Depression in the 1930s, and was a big part of the crash of 2008. And so, we need to go back to where they're separated, where a depositor bank is taking care of the depositors, and investment banks are using their own money or those of their customers who understand they're dealing with high risk to go on out and play with these ventures.
Okay, now, as I understand it, it's Trump that and some of his advisors that are recommending this.
Yeah, Trump and his advisors are recommending getting rid of Dodd-Frank and going back to Glass-Steagall. And by the way, they're not going to get a lot of opposition from anywhere except Wall Street on this one, because everybody now understands it was a complete disaster. It led to, it certainly contributed to the meltdown of 2008 and this just completely runaway greed culture of Wall Street that impoverished the nation and created all these instant overnight billionaires in the hedge funds.
Well, And I understand if they get this through, that means if one of these big banks go down again, they have to go through bankruptcy.
Yeah, and they should. They should.
Yes.
You know, if they're engaging in criminal actions or they're making bad choices, let them go out of business and open up room for somebody with better fiscal sense and better ethics to start a business. And for the last decade, our government seems to want to prop up failing businesses and shutting out newcomers who might actually do a better job. That's not really very progressive for a government that prides itself on being progressive. Janet, got to let you go. Got to do a break for commercials. Okay. Back with a couple of phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take 2 more phone calls, and then we are closing the phone line, so don't bother calling in at this point because we got 2 people waiting on hold. And we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Bruce, aloha. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
We lost Bruce.
We lost Bruce. Let's go to Bill in Philadelphia. Aloha, Bill. What's on your mind? Bill, are you there?
I am here. I just want to say thank you, Michael. Thank you, your wife, Alex Jones, Breitbart, Drudge. All you guys are absolute saints, because if it wasn't for you guys, a lot of us wouldn't have the slightest idea what's going on in this world, because the media is totally trash. I was working the polls here in Philadelphia, and out of 850 people who voted. You know how many people voted for Trump? Get one guess.
Enlighten us.
12. And me and my wife were 2 of them. Anyway, I just have, and thank God the whole country is not like Philadelphia. I just want to say that. Anyway, if for whatever reason that Hillary gets a pardon, can that be reversed? That's the question.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump's going to be the president. He's going to have a GOP Congress. He's going to be picking judges for the Supreme Court. The fact of the matter is that there actually is no legal definition regarding a preemptive pardon by the president. It's a legal fiction because technically a pardon only has an effect when somebody has been charged and convicted, and then it goes into the file. This person has now been pardoned by the chief executive. If there is no file, there really is no pardon. It's almost little more than a propaganda device saying, "I am telling you, not to investigate over here." But certainly the one area that is wide open is that once Trump takes office, if new crimes surface or if new information surfaces about old crimes, any existing pardons are irrelevant. If you are convicted of stealing from a 7-Eleven store and you are pardoned for that, and then you go out and you rob another 7-Eleven store, that previous pardon does not keep you out of trouble. So the same principle would apply here. And we know there is a huge amount of crime and corruption in the Clintons' background that has never even been looked at seriously yet. So we're just going to keep putting the pressure on until finally there is a popular mandate saying, something has to be done. We cannot honestly tell our children that they should follow the rules and obey the laws when we see these very rich and powerful people just doing whatever they feel like doing and getting away with it. That's a terrible example to set for our children and certainly for the next generation. And by the way, I noticed my wife and I went out and did our shopping this morning, and I was wearing my Hillary for Prison T-shirt and my Hillary for Prison button, and I was getting a lot of positive feedback on that. It's like now the election is over and Trump won, people are willing to be a lot more open about their misgivings regarding Hillary Clinton, so we need to take advantage of that.
Yeah, the transition period, it probably won't be that long before people come to their senses anyway.
Well, again, all of this rioting going on in the streets and the vandalism and everything, that's going to backfire horribly because America is getting a look at the true face of Hillary Clinton and her supporters. It's the criminal class.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Anyway, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to close the phone lines. I want to get some more news stories out here, some more real news before the top of the hour when the lovely Lady Claire comes on in here. So we were talking about the blame-shifting regatta. Everybody's pointing fingers. and everybody's got an analysis out there over at Aletho News. They're saying, poor liberals, you've got nobody to blame for yourselves, but yourselves for what happened. And just talking about how they really almost lost touch with reality, with the extreme political correctness, the victimhood, saying you've got to have all these the nonsense over what bathroom we're supposed to be using. It really got completely out of control. And I think in many ways the liberal establishment fell into a trap that I have seen politicians, and certainly during my time in Hollywood, I saw a lot of celebrities fall into it, and that is the trap of starting to believe your own press releases. And I think the liberals stopped seeing what was going on in front of them and started believing their own propaganda about how well they were loved and the American people are with them and the people are going to be for Hillary, and that's why they got caught so by surprise. I mean, the corporate media obviously would have not gone along with this idea of selling Hillary to us unless they had a high expectation of success. And Trump's win has taken them completely by surprise, and they're thrashing around trying to figure out what they're going to do with it, because now everybody has seen that during the 2016 elections, the corporate media was not unbiased, they were not objective, they were not fair and balanced, they were advocates for the Democrats and the liberals in what we know was a rigged election right from the primaries. And so they're struggling with that. And they actually thought they were going to pull it off, maybe because they've had so many successes in the past. But they don't seem to understand how the world has changed. Now, Franklin Roosevelt won his election by taking advantage of radio. John F. Kennedy prevailed in his first election by using TV effectively. His TV debate with Richard Nixon is actually studied for all the mistakes that Nixon made in terms of his makeup and his demeanor and his presentation, and for what Kennedy did. And Donald Trump won this election by successfully using social media and the independent media in his campaign. And we're seeing people over at CNN are wringing their hands and saying, "Oh, those kids with their blogs and the websites, they just wrecked it for everybody." No, we didn't. We just wrecked it for the criminals in power, and that was what we set out to do here. So we're seeing more and more articles, and I don't know how genuine these are, but I'm looking at one at Splice today where they're talking about how they were a Trump supporter all along, but they were afraid to be public about it because of all the harassment that was coming down from Hillary's people, the brown shirts. And people are now starting to come on out and say, yes, we knew there was an issue with Hillary. We knew Trump was not perfect, but he's the better option. And that's where Trump's victory came from, and that's why it caught so many people completely by surprise. And I'll be honest, caught me by surprise. I thought for sure Hillary had succeeded in stealing the election. I know she certainly thought so. Another article coming on out from Zero Hedge carrying a warning we should all heed. Hillary is down, but not the oligarchs. They're still out there. Soros is still out there playing his games, plotting to end democracy in this country and turn it into a dictatorship like he's done so many other places like Ukraine. What a disaster Ukraine has turned into. Do you want to see what's going on in Ukraine happening here in the United States? Do you want to see what's happening with all the problems with the refugees in Europe here in the United States? And if the answer is no, and it should be, or seek therapy, then you've got to stand up and oppose George Soros and all of his non-governmental organizations. And I hope he gets taken to the cleaners in that lawsuit over that dead Dallas police officer. Because, yes, Soros tinkering with the world has resulted in deaths all across the globe for which he should be held accountable. We have the gun grabbers who are out there saying that the gun manufacturers ought to be held liable for people killed with their product. All right, well, let's apply that to George Soros, who throws his money into these organizations who go on out and destabilize governments, cause riots. Remember during the Maidan in Kiev, they had snipers up on the roofs shooting in both directions to fan the anger up. Soros paid for all that. He's guilty. He's guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. I certainly hope we're not going to have a bunch of George Soros snipers up on the rooftops on some of these anti-Trump protests shooting in all directions to try and get things wound up, but they could. This is how he likes to play. And I have a serious, serious problem with these money junkies who think that having that much money gives them a divine right to play with this planet and its people like toys. I don't want George Soros in control of this country. He's not been elected to that office. Now, a lot of people are saying, whither the Democratic Party? Because with Hillary Clinton's downfall, Debbie Wasserman Schultz having to resign, and now they're talking about Donna Brazile needs to be kicked out. The Democratic Party is almost leaderless, directionless, and talentless. They've got people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. There are no new young up-and-comers that can be presented as the future of the Democratic Party, except possibly, of course, Chelsea Clinton, who's already being groomed for a run for the Congress. But the Democrats did it to themselves back when they anointed Hillary at their convention. And I actually put up this little graphic that said, "Congratulations, Democrats. You are now welded to Hillary Clinton's destiny. And when she goes down, it will destroy the Democratic Party the way Richard Nixon destroyed the GOP. And it will be 10 years before they can recover, at least." Story over on CNN, how did Trump win? Here are 24 theories. And, of course, nowhere in there is this idea that maybe CNN's blatant bias toward Hillary Clinton might have alienated a lot of their viewers. The short version is it's all the fault of the Internet and all those white people. Those white people, they're the ones who just cursed us with Donald Trump. All these white people, we need to get rid of them. Now, can you imagine what would happen if somebody at CNN or ABC or NBC said, those black people are all a problem. We got to get rid of them. Why is it okay to be bashing on white people and talking about exterminating them and get a free pass when applied to any other ethnic group, you would be vilified and demonized, lose your job, and banished from your career? Who is it who painted a target on the back of white people? Story out of the New York Times, thoughts for the horrified. And they're out there saying, we were just as surprised and taken aback as anybody else over what was going on. And they're basically taking their Nobel Prize winning columnist and they're wagging him out saying, see, he's got a Nobel Prize, you should listen to him. As he thrashes about and wrings his hands and whines and moans about how this could have happened in the United States of America, that they did not get the president they thought we should have. Story out of Business Insider, Trump's win has shattered the Democratic Party. Well, maybe not. In my opinion, the Democratic Party wrecked the Democratic Party. First and foremost, by openly defying their own Democratic voters to sabotage Bernie Sanders and hand the nomination to Hillary Clinton. They alienated their own base. By openly cheating, they destroyed their own credibility. Looking at the demographics from the election, one of the things that leaps right on out is voter turnout among Democrats was actually quite low. And reading between the lines, it looks like Bernie Sanders supporters did one of two things. They voted for Donald Trump, or they didn't bother voting at all. And the Democrats did this to themselves. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. They're now firmly welded to the fate of Hillary Clinton, and we still have the investigations into the Clinton Foundation, possible espionage involving that email server, going back and looking at the death of Ron Brown, the death of Vince Foster, the death of Seth Rich, There's a rich harvest of scandal and corruption and crime and hopefully prosecutions to go through over the next 4 years. And we're going to have a sympathetic administration to work with. Story coming out of the Political Insider, experts are now agreeing the Clinton Foundation's not going to survive. It was propped up by the political connections of the Clintons and the expectation that Hillary was going to wind up being the president. Huge amounts of money were being poured into that foundation. And even in the leaked emails from WikiLeaks, Hillary's own people are saying the people making these donations are expecting there to be favors from a future, or either from the state Secretary of State Hillary Clinton or the future President Hillary Clinton. Well, now that Hillary has lost, those donations are going to dry up. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some people are asking for refunds. And they have that IRS investigation hanging over them as well. And Hillary is not going to have the bully puppet of the Oval Office to prop up the core of this corrupt network. Remember when Cher said back on the 6th, just before the election, came on out and said, if Trump wins, I'm going to leave the planet. Canada's apparently not far enough away for her. Cher was saying, if Trump wins, I'm going to have to leave the planet. Okay, Cher, can I have your car? I need a new car. I understand you drive a very nice car. I could use your car, as long as you're going to be leaving it behind. And by the way, all of these celebrities who said they were going to leave the country, well, they're either backtracking. Whoopi Goldberg is saying she never actually said that. Others are saying, oh, it was just a joke. It's not really going to happen. And the rest are just staying silent and pretending like nothing ever went wrong. Megyn Kelly is now out there telling her audiences that, you know something, that the Trump presidency is going to turn out okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. We were just kidding you about aliens invading and eating your brains if Trump won. Just like I was kidding about a little radiation is good for... Oh, no, that was Ann Coulter who said radiation was good for you. Now, the Saudis are a little less enthusiastic about President Trump, mostly because, as I've said before, Trump's a billionaire. He's got his own money. He can't be bought. He can't be bribed. He doesn't need it. And, you know, there was an interesting quote from Ben Franklin, who, in the midst of designing a republic and a democracy, admitted that our very best and our very worst leaders would be the very, very rich. And he hoped that the best of the rich would be our leaders because they wouldn't be confused about their own economic need in making choices for the country. Going to take a break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Coming up on the top, somebody just actually sent me from the WikiLeaks.org website this email that purports to be from Bernie Madoff to John Podesta. And I don't know if it really was from Bernie Madoff. I got to tell you, reading it, it almost reads like the Nigerian scam. I've got all this money in a bank. I need your help to get it out, for which I will share. And I'm starting to think somebody was like yanking Podesta's ankle on this because of the way it's written. It's funny to read. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was made up, but it's still it's entertaining. What can I tell you? Schumer is now telling labor leaders the Trans-Pacific Partnership is now officially dead, which I think is a good thing. Now, getting on back to the ramifications of Trump's victory, do you remember a while back when Newt Gingrich was talking about the possibility of a Trump presidency, and he made that weird comment that Trump drives the establishment crazy, he's uncontrollable, he was not in the secret society, he hasn't been through the initiation rites, and they have no idea how to relate to him? Well, yeah, that's why we liked him. He wasn't part of the clique. He wasn't part of the elites. Wasn't part of that established political machine. That's why we liked him. That's why we disliked Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was just going to be more of the same that we've already been through. The Syrians are absolutely delighted at Trump's victory, saying that American voters have chosen to put a stop to the U.S. financing of terrorism, because the Syrians are just as aware as you are that the U.S. government, President Obama, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, were actually funding and supporting ISIS. And by the way, apparently ISIS over in Mosul is now using chemical weapons. Ooh, bad ISIS. They're committing war crimes here. Over in Syria, the fighting is still going on. It doesn't look like Russia has started their push into Aleppo, but the Syrian forces have managed to enter Manag Air Base, primarily trying to recover wounded and dead, but they are continuing to make gains. Oh, there you are. Okay. All right. Apparently over in Brussels, Juncker is threatening the Prime Minister of Italy. You will obey the EU. Because it does look like the EU is starting to come apart. They're dealing with the Brexit. They're trying to figure out some way they can overturn that. And you've got other countries. France is talking about leaving. Italy's talking about leaving. It's all starting to fall apart, and Juncker's just having a cow over this. His trans-European empire is starting to fall apart. And, of course, above him, you have Soros and the other globalists who are seeing their dream of a single world government in their lifetime evaporate. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you watching on BAM User TV, this gorgeous creature sitting behind me is the lovely Lady Claire, who joins us on our Friday third hours. And what is your first story?
Well, it's something that's getting little to no coverage here with the corporate media. But apparently, citizens of Bahrain are supporting a senior Shia clerk, Sheikh Qasim. And apparently, they have taken to the streets in several villages in town in support of this guy. Today, a mass protest was held near Imam Sadiq Mosque in the village of Diraz, which is the hometown of the cleric. And they condemned Manama's continued ban on holding Friday prayers in the village. Our Muslim people are very serious about their Friday prayers. And to not be able to do that is pretty darn devastating. On June 20th, Bahraini officials stripped the 79-year-old cleric of his citizenship less than a week after suspending the Al-Wefaq National Islamic Society, the company's main opposition bloc, and dissolving the Islamic Enlightenment Institute founded by this guy, and the opposition Al-Risala Islamic Association. And this is happening even though there are mounting security measures. And I look at this situation. The Al-Khalifa monarchy is Sunni. Most of the residents of Bahrain are Shiite. And to create this level of political oppression, so far the protests have been relatively peaceful, but if it gets out of control with the U.S. and UK not making any concerted efforts to blunt the anger of Shiite Bahrainis by negotiating even some minor concessions, this whole thing may blow up in the Al-Khalifa monarchy's face like a bad trick cigar.
And the U.S. and UK would find themselves kicked out of their military bases.
Yeah.
Including that brand new one that Prince Charles just inaugurated.
Right.
But I think a lot of the tension in this whole Muslim world is going to start to fade now that Trump has won the election. For one thing, he's already removed from his website the comment about banning all Muslims from coming to this country. So he's already pulling back and saying, okay, this needs a rethink.
Yeah.
We know that Israel, of course, is still completely oppressive of the Muslims. They've now banned the public call to prayer that goes on out there. So I guess everybody has to use their wristwatch and figure.
You mean in Jerusalem or in all of Israel?
Actually, I think it's. I think it's just one area. It's around Jerusalem, yes, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. I watch the U.S. and UK watching this go down and making no positive efforts to try to tamp down some of the violence here, and I don't get it. They're just not seeing things through.
Well, Bahrain is simply a place where they're going to have their military assets, and the U.S. government only makes an issue of human rights when they can use it as an excuse to go on in and take over somebody else's country.
Right.
Once that country is firmly under U.S. control, they don't care what happens to ordinary people.
Yeah.
Look at every U.S. Overthrown country in the world. Look at how the quality of life has absolutely cratered following that U.S. intervention.
Right.
Our government doesn't care about ordinary people, and that includes people here in the United States of America. And I'll give you an example. This being Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, the illegal immigrants and refugees are getting all kinds of support and help, and our veterans are still sitting on waiting lists to get treatment at the VA. Many of them have died waiting for that treatment.
This is so wrong, Michael. This is so wrong.
The VA spent, what, $20 million on artwork to make their place look better.
Yeah.
There was this tragic case that was actually over in Sweden, which illustrates this is a global problem, where a homeless veteran froze to death in the streets. Take that, Al Gore. And at the same time, these refugees are being given housing and food and clothing at taxpayer expense. Why are the illegal immigrants and the refugees in any country a higher priority than our serving military or our military who have served and are now dealing with the aftermath?
It shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be.
It makes a joke of all these politicians who get up on Veterans Day and they say all the things, our veterans, you know, don't you want to be a veteran too, you young people here? Just sign on to the dotted line. But it really is, it is a crime. And I've said this before, whether you agree with all these wars or you don't, and I most assuredly do not, we as a nation do owe a debt of honor to every single American who's put that uniform on and have suffered harm for it.
Yeah.
We owe them. The government is supposed to be taking care of them on our behalf using our tax money. Unfortunately, they're taking our tax money and they're sending it off to places like Israel, and our veterans are being neglected.
Yeah.
And they've made a special effort to deal with the homeless veterans because that was an embarrassment in the media, but there are still homeless veterans out there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're in our Friday, Hour 3 with the lovely Lady Claire. And what is your next story?
Well, apparently next week, Obama is set to greenlight the disputed Dakota Access Pipeline.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, he may have a little bit of problems with that.
Oh, really? How come?
Yeah, well, because due to the protests and due to the fact that the company that was building the pipeline didn't have all the permits and even worse, failed to report archaeological artifacts their digging had found.
Yeah.
Norway's largest bank, DNB, is considering pulling their investment out of the project until the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, you know, their grievances are met.
Yes.
Now, Obama was talking before about telling the Dakota Access Pipeline Company to reroute the pipeline, and he may do that, and that would solve everybody's problem.
Right. And apparently there are supposed to be some more protests on Tuesday, and to any of people around the Standing Sioux people who are very concerned about the quality of their water for themselves and future generations, and that is certainly a tremendously legitimate concern. Please,
we can all identify with it, especially the people in Flint, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
And these lands are also religiously important to these people. Now, imagine how you would feel if you've spent your entire life in a town and there's a church and there's a cemetery behind the church and a whole bunch of your family are buried there, and all of a sudden some oil company comes through and says, we're going to dig up the cemetery because we got to put a pipeline through here.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that? That is how the Sioux are feeling about this pipeline.
And I am reaching out to anyone listening to the show who knows anyone who will be going to the protests. Please remember, keep it peaceful, because they're going to be horrifically outnumbered and outgunned, and there are tremendous potentials for dangers to themselves and their kids. And apparently the people who've been policing this, privately or otherwise, have no compunction about using, the gas and the rubber bullets, and they were
on one occasion live rounds.
Yeah.
Apparently, one of the protesters was shot with a full live round for no reason at all. And this is the fascism that our nation has decayed into on full display, where we have a confrontation between the people who are on their land and want it protected, and a corporation is coming from completely outside, and they want to go on through with the pipeline. And whose side is the government on? It's on the side of the corporation. That's fascism.
Yeah. And this move, if he does it on Obama's part, is simply a continuing and painful demonstration that he is no less beholden to his corporate masters than his Republican colleagues are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd now like to talk a little bit about health care, and money. There was a poll recently that indicated that half of America cannot afford more than $100 a month on health insurance. More than 52.5% in this poll said that they couldn't afford to spend more than $100 a month on health insurance premiums. And this poll comes from Health Pocket, a technology company that compares health plans. And the group asked survey respondents at the beginning of open enrollment what was the highest monthly premium they could afford to pay for health insurance in 2017. And more than half of the respondents said $100 a month or less, while 15.9% said that they could afford to spend $200 a month. Just over 11% said that they could afford $300 a month. 5.5 said that they could afford $400 a month, and 4.8 said that they could spend $500 a month, and 9.8 said that they could afford $500 or more. But there are double-digit increases happening in the Affordable Care Act, which is cratering, Michael. People are getting less choice and higher premiums. I think that this legislation, which was supposed to be...
It was another gouging of the American people. Obamacare's real purpose, it was written actually by the health insurance companies themselves. They wrote up this bill, came on into Obama and said, put your name on this, call it Obamacare, and move forward. This was all about gouging Americans for more money by the health insurance companies, who would then share some of the goodies, the loot, the booty, with the government through taxes. And our government is hopelessly in debt and dead broke, especially after all these wars. So they were desperate for finding another way to take more money away from you, and so they went along with this. And the net result was we didn't get to keep our existing plans. We didn't get to keep our existing doctors. We were forced onto these Obamacare-compliant health insurance policies, which are way more expensive than we had been paying before, and even worse, they have deductibles that are just absolutely through the roof. The vast majority of Americans who've been forced to buy these health insurance policies will never actually use them during the course of a year, because they'll be paying full price for their medical care, and they still can't quite reach that deductible to get any benefit whatsoever. The only way you're going to get past that deductible is if you suffer a major illness or injury, and nobody wants to go through that.
No.
This was just a flat-out giveaway to the health insurance companies, and people cannot afford these policies. They're not buying them. The health insurance companies are now actually in trouble because it didn't work out. They're crying for a new bailout, which, by the way, was also part of the Obamacare law, that if this didn't work, the taxpayers would be forced to bail out the insurance companies. And I think now that the election is over, I'm waiting for Obama to come on out and scream about human-caused global warming and hit us all with a carbon tax.
By executive order, by the way.
By executive order.
And, in Europe, they've got us beaten us 15 ways from Sunday. A lot of times it's a single-payer program. It's the basic Model T Ford. But the insurance companies make up their money by people who want to have more elaborate programs. Care is matched to need, and, they work.
Because the system is being run to actually provide good health care. And Obamacare was never about that. Obamacare was just another cash grab by a desperately broke and hopelessly in debt government. And again, I'm glad Donald Trump won the election. I would not want to be in his shoes, because he's inheriting an absolute mess. Basically, Obama and Clinton and Bush have driven the ship of state into that iceberg. It's down by the bow, and we're expecting Donald Trump to come on board, take the bridge, and somehow get the USS Tannic to New York. And even if he gets it there, all anybody in the media is going to do is complain about the dent in the bow.
Right.
But he wanted the job, and now he's got it. But he's probably only just now becoming aware of some very ugly realities about the true nature of our nation and its economy. Yeah. Remember in Greece how Papandreou and Goldman Sachs cooked the books to hide from the EU and the Greek people just how bad their debt was, and it remained hidden until the new Greek government came on in and saw what a total mess it was, and then the new Greek government turned around and said, can we have a recount? Maybe we didn't actually win this, you know.
Yeah. I hear you, but I hope that some positive things may come up to make health care available and affordable for more of America's citizens with the Trump administration.
Well, again, we need the cost of this stuff to come on down.
Yeah.
Americans are paying anywhere between 20 and 40 times the cost for medicine and treatment that's identical to what you're getting in other countries for far, far less. And the U.S. government is engaged in protectionism. They've now passed laws saying you can't go up to Canada to buy your prescription medications because we can't guarantee the safety and efficacy of the Canadian medicines, which are bought from the same companies as the American medications. And by the way, a lot of the U.S. pharmacies are buying medications in bulk at low cost from companies in Asia that have records for falsifying the drugs. You're not actually getting the medicine in them. So this idea that we're somehow the standard for quality medical care, we're certainly the most expensive, no question about that. But experts agree. Medical care in the U.S., health care, is ranked 33rd in the world, even though it is the most expensive.
Yeah.
Because medical care is just another money-making opportunity. It's not really about health care. This money junkie fever has corrupted our entire society. And again, I don't have a problem with people who want to become rich, like George Lucas or Steve Jobs or James Cameron, whom I admire greatly, who makes something, who contributes something, a movie, a computer, whatever, and we voluntarily give them our money.
Yeah.
They become rich. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. Okay?
I agree. And the other thing...
I have a finishing thing, and then I'll go back to this.
All right.
But there has to be a balance in society between those who are obsessed with money, those who genuinely want to heal the sick or invent some new thing that will make our lives better, or simply maintain and repair what we already have. And our society is tremendously out of balance. What is that Native American word, Koyaanisqatsi?
Koyaanisqatsi, life out of balance.
Yeah, we're there. We're absolutely there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Speaking of health, one of the things I have noticed, and I have a friend who is going through chemo right now, pancreatic cancer, stage 3.
Ouch.
And what I did for her was I put together all of the nutritional information and links that her doctor should have been sharing with her, but didn't. And when it comes to your health, I would say one thing very firmly: knowledge is power. Start to educate
now I need to put in a disclaimer here.
Yes.
Claire and I, are not doctors.
No.
I played one once in a movie. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're not offering medical advice to people who are suffering cancer. You should be going to your doctor. But at the same time, it's okay to take responsibility to be looking after your nutrition, because currently medical schools don't really spend a lot of time teaching doctors about things like nutrition.
Yeah.
It's all about what product to offer for sale for whatever the patient seems to have that day.
Right. But it's important, and if you have a doctor who's open, sometimes you can educate them, and that is not a bad thing at all.
We have actually done that when Claire was going through her joint pain, and the doctor had absolutely no idea that exposure to formaldehyde precursors could trigger these symptoms.
Nope.
And so anyway, again, the love of money or the lust for money has distorted our society. It's destroyed what used to be the best aspects of what we call the American character. That character was something the rest of the world could and did look up to. But it's gone. It's been poisoned by this constant exposure to the money junkies, who basically, in order to feed their own addiction, eventually turn us all into money junkies just to survive and get by.
Yeah. Something health-related that I'd like to look at real quickly before our break. In leaked emails, aspartame has been linked to diabetes, Alzheimer's, and obesity. Now, what this stuff is supposed to do is give you the comfort of the taste of sweetness without any additional calories. But there is new information that has confirmed diet soda is actually linked to a myriad of health problems, including diabetes and Alzheimer's. And how it does this, aspartame, may result in methanol toxicity, which has recently been linked to Alzheimer's disease.
That's wood alcohol, and that's a toxin. I mean, you need to remember, aspartame was, it's a neurotoxin. It was originally classed as a biological weapon.
Right.
For heck's sake. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, welcome back to the show. I'm looking at some of the stuff that the readers are sending in, the listeners, and we have a lot of very clever, creative people who are sending us in things which are funny and humorous. And this one is actually germane to what you were going to talk about.
Okay.
So go for it.
Okay. Safe spaces abound for college students. Colleges and universities nationwide are establishing safe spaces for students troubled by the results of the 2016 presidential election, offering everything from counseling hours to painting activities. And St. Mary's University has embraced the trend of colleges shielding students from the results of the presidential election, offering a safe space with warm drinks and nourishment for students who are stressed by results. And apparently, Etta Martinez-Anderson, the Assistant Dean of Student Life, sent a school-wide email encouraging students to take a deep breath and console each other in the Intercultural Center and the Women's Resource Center. And she says, whether you're celebrating a victory or grieving a loss, let us remember to take care of each other, she wrote. And they could come to the WRC to paint, engage in creative projects, hold dialogue, and reflect. And I've got to tell you, Mike, I think the colleges and universities who are doing this are doing their students an horrific disservice.
Yes.
Because real life holds absolutely zero safe spaces. And the sooner students understand this, the better they're going to be able to cope with the disappointments they're going to have to endure on the way to becoming self-actualized human beings.
Well, I mean, it's this idea of students being given a day off because they didn't get Hillary as president. When you go out in the real world, most times you're not going to get what you want because there are going to be 3 or 4 or 5 other people who want it, and you're just going to have to learn how to deal with that. And in many ways, our universities are repeating one of the major mistakes of the militant feminist movement of the 1990s, of saying you can all be successful and we're going to teach you how to be successful, and they never prepared them to deal with failure.
Yeah.
And so when these women went out in the real world and they got into corporate life and they failed for the same reasons as men around them failed, they went bonkers. Oh, it's the patriarchy, it's sexism, it's all the rest of that. I'm a victim of mental rape and so forth. Somebody just sent me this. I'm going to read it on the air here. The new U.S. management regrets to inform all snowflakes, social justice warriors, eternal targets of imaginary offenses, and victims of microaggressions that as of November 9th, 2016, all safe spaces have been closed. We realize this may be a traumatic change for those feeling entitled to safe spaces who have come to depend on restraining others who hold more traditional, sensible values and have recently seen the prohibition of exercising First Amendment rights. We offer our deepest, insincere, and sarcastic apologies. Things are different now. Grown-ups have taken the helm. Adults will soon be in charge. The coddling and papering and catering to your delicate whims is over. Just be advised. Now go and watch television.
Now, what has to happen here after the consoling, the artwork, and the dialogue is that these students need to come to grips with the reality of why their favored candidate didn't win the election and take positive actions to avoid a situation in 2020. First and foremost, the Clinton cartel machine robbed Bernie Sanders of his chance at the presidency by cheating every possible creative way that they could. That's been substantiated. had Sanders become the Democratic nominee, I could have possibly gotten behind him.
Me too.
But the Clinton cartel made that impossible to happen. And although Clinton likely won the popular vote, she didn't win enough votes in the Electoral College to swing the election her way. Now, one practical thing college students may want to do is get behind sponsoring legislation to do away with the Electoral College completely. And they may have many Democratic legislators who want to get behind this right now.
But again, if this had been a popular vote contest, Trump would have run his campaign differently, and he probably still would have won.
Yeah.
And again, before we start crowing about Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote by 1/4% of all voters, we have to subtract out all those illegal immigrants who voted, all the dead people who voted, all of these multiple, repeat voters, and all of those computers that were taking votes for Donald Trump and assigning them to Hillary Clinton.
Right.
The reality is, no, she didn't win the popular vote either. She stole it.
Yeah.
But again, they don't get to change the rules after the game is over.
No.
We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Actually, don't call. We've closed the phone lines for the rest of the show here so that Claire and I can actually get some news on out. So, get your fingers off those buttons. We're not going to answer the phones.
I'd kind of like to continue about the the safe space
the safe spaces
movement.
Here.
One of the things these students need to do is to advocate for the Democratic Party to get rid of their crooked, globalist, sociopathic leaders and replace them with individuals who actually care about the people of this country and their future. Donna Brazile, pardon me, should be bounced out of her position in party leadership yesterday. And, Mike, I'm thinking that this might be a meaningful, constructive way of engaging Bernie Sanders as party co-chair with the now Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, who is the first Asian-American senator from Illinois and is also a disabled vet. I have a lot of respect for this gal personally.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think that as a woman and as an Asian-American woman and as a vet, she has some perspectives that are pretty real, And the other thing students need to understand, at the end of the day, this election was a referendum on continued economic social costs of globalization versus the choice to re-embrace American nationalism. And because of all the hurt globalism has caused so many people in this country who've had their jobs offshored, outsourced, to a country with ultra-low labor costs like Malaysia, where the use of slave labor is still tolerated.
Well, we have slave labor in this country. It's called the prison industrial complex.
I know.
And I keep going back to this over and over again, this idea of Adam Smith, where if you're just being greedy for yourself, you're going to improve the system as a whole. And so we had this generation of corporate leaders who grew up out of the Harvard MBA program in post-World War II, thinking, well, we'll just move all the manufacturing to these countries with low labor costs. And under the George W. Bush administration, there was actually incentives written into the tax code to take these jobs to other countries.
Right.
And nobody stopped to realize that if the American people don't have any high-paying jobs, they're not going to be going down to those shopping malls and buying things. They're not going to be buying new homes. They're not going to be buying new cars.
Nope.
And nobody was really thinking about that. And again, I maintain that if there is one entity that is supposed to be looking out for what is best for the country as a whole, that has to be that federal government, and specifically the White House. And I think Trump is probably going to be doing a lot better job of that long view overview than we saw from Obama or Bush or Bill Clinton or any of these other people who were just there to help their cronies get richer at the expense of the American people.
And perhaps at the end of their safe spaces odyssey, these students may need instead their Buddha on the road moment to see what has happened to the country over the last 12 years. These wars, promoted by both Bush and Obama, have not made us any more safe. However, they have lined the pockets of major corporations quite well, but cost we the people trillions. Domestically, the effects of homelessness and hunger have escalated mightily, and homeless tent cities have expanded all over the country in 2016, as well as childhood hunger.
We're actually in a worse economic condition today than during the Depression of the 1930s, we have a much higher real unemployment rate. Unemployment peaked at 25% during the Depression of the 30s. Now it's close to 30% here with no signs of reversing. And I have a message to all those warmongers out there. Do you really think we're going to be able to fight a war against Russia or China when you have these whining, simpering, little weak sissies created by our educational system who have to run and hide in a closet when they hear a bad word? Yeah. I mean, what a contrast to 1942 when you had 18-year-olds storming the beaches of Normandy, knowing they could probably get killed in the process. Yeah. And you think you're going to take this group of weak social justice warriors and snowflakes and actually turn them into a seriously capable military force? I don't think so.
Not going to happen. And I would like to hope that if these students really take a look at how bad it is in this country, that the first reaction is going to be anger. How could this be allowed to happen? But I'd like the second to be reflective and to be, how can they do something to change things right where they are? Well, they can volunteer at some charity they feel good about, which does feed the homeless, help the lonely, elderly, and medically fragile. That is one positive way of taking ownership of some of the daunting issues facing this country can do. And it's something everyone can do, just even to a little degree. Even if it's a can of beans for a food bank, you can do that. Most of our listeners out there can do that.
Unfortunately, most liberals' idea of helping society is to take money away from this person over here and give it to that person over there, and then say, look, I'm doing good things for the world.
Yeah. When the Amish raise a barn, they do it in one day because everyone is working cooperatively and in the spirit of goodwill. Having your safe space will ultimately not get the barn built, and in their despair, I think this is what these students really need to hang on to, a sense that they can make a positive difference by doing something in their community they feel good about.
That would be a good thing. And they need exposure to the real world, because you go through these schools, this entire educational system being turned into this easy-to-offend, fragile little flower who is reduced to tears by a bad word or locker room language. You get out in the real world and you see what it's like being in business and being in competition and trying to get actually something done. It's going to be a psychic shock to most of these people. They're not mentally prepared to deal with the real world. They're just being turned into loyal liberal supporters and voters.
I know with my own work, I'm only as good as my last lead when I do marketing.
Well, I'm only as good as my last radio show. Yesterday's show kind of sucked.
Oh, I don't think so, dear. There was an article in Blacklisted News. Apparently, with the election of Trump, al-Nusra is on the run, and Trump induces his first major policy change on Syria. The Obama administration, through the CIA-led Saudi asset, John Brennan, very close to the Saudis, they were feeding a lot of weapons training and billions of dollars to alleged moderate rebels, who then turned around and either gave the CIA gifts to al-Qaeda in Syria or joined it themselves. The scheme was no secret, and Russia, as well as Syria, pointed this out innumerable times. The Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov negotiated with the U.S. Secretary of State, who promised to separate the moderate rebels from al-Qaeda. But Kerry never delivered. Instead, he falsely accused Russia of committing atrocities that never happened. The CIA kept the upper hand within the Obama administration and continued. But now what's going to happen is that apparently the U.S. is going to shoot to kill the al-Nusra and will be coordinating with Russia. And it's amazing. It looks like Trump is already making waves in foreign policy, and he hasn't even taken the oath of office yet. That's kind of an amazing change.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what is next on your list here?
The next on my list is longtime mass surveillance defenders freak out now that Trump will have control. And there are a lot of people who support all sorts of surveillance. But now they are getting a little bit nervous because Trump is going to be in charge of it all. What's he going to do?
He's going to be businesslike.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on out and look at the analysis of cost per vote of the two campaigns, Hillary's people, they had tons of money. They were spending it like they were in the government.
Yep.
And Donald Trump was running his campaign on a budget, came out to less than $5 a vote. That's absolutely amazing. And I think Donald Trump is going to go on in, and probably his first year in office, he's going to be looking at any place that is costing a lot of money and not producing anything positive, and he's going to start shutting it all down because we can't afford these luxuries anymore. And we know that the NSA has built this global intrusive spy on everybody's system that doesn't seem really able to do much of anything useful at all. They can't catch the ransomware writers. They can't stop the flood of Viagra emails coming into our email boxes. They really don't seem able to do much of anything at all. And I think Donald Trump is going to say, let's have surveillance on the people who are of legitimate concern to the government, foreign leaders, spies, and so forth and so on, and leave everybody else alone. We don't need to spend the money. We're not getting anything for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge amount of money, and I know that they've probably surveilled Mike and I. In fact, Mike and I have had conversations about us being surveilled as punishment duty.
We're the punishment duty. If you really mess up, you have to stand surveillance on the Riveros here because we're not really doing anything all that interesting. But again, it's a hideous waste of money, and I think we're going to see a transition from a government that is just trying to create jobs to a government that's going to create productive jobs, and that is certainly very scary to people whose entire career has been about sitting at a desk and doing a rubber stamp on a piece of paper and shuffling it back and forth, or sitting back under the name of national security, stealing pictures of naked people off of Americans' private computers to pleasure themselves with late in the evening hours, as Edward Snowden has confirmed the NSA likes to do.
Yeah. This one, you have...
I keep my pictures of Claire locked up. NSA can't get... It's air-gapped.
He really doesn't have any, but that's okay. You have to appreciate the irony in this following story. Female anti-bullying ambassador 23 arrested at Trump Tower protest for pushing man 74 to the ground in fight over new president-elect. I mean, wow. And this is the image now of the Democratic supporters, and it's
breaking
terrible.
windows, looting, burning cars.
And cracking heads.
Because love trumps hate. Love trumps hate.
And,
boom, boom, boom,
okay,
boom.
She was a female anti-bullying ambassador and gospel singer. She was arrested last night for pushing an elderly man to the ground in a fight outside of Trump Towers. Shakara McLaurin, 23, from Brooklyn, joined angry protesters outside the president-elect's New York home in the second night of uproar since his election win. And it was a Black Lives Matter protester, and she pushed this guy, 74, so hard that it caused him to hit the back of his head on the sidewalk.
That's not good.
Now, she herself had been the victim of a brutal beating, but she was arrested for felony assault and faced court on Friday. And she claimed that she was provoked when the man, who probably was drunk, used a very nasty racial epithet against her. And we have to do on race relations in this country. We do. But
we have to undo all the fanning up of racial tensions that happened this year in support of Hillary's campaign. We have to roll back Black Lives Matter, and we have to get it back to All Lives Matter.
I think so.
Remember when people who were saying All Lives Matter were being denounced as racist? How can you even say a white life matters? It doesn't. Only the Black lives matter. And you don't cure racism by being racist.
No, you don't.
You try and win elections by being racist, and that's what they're doing. They've caused a lot of damage to our society, and we're going to have to be aware that that was done, that it was done to us from outside, and we're going to have to work together, all of us, to just go up to each other and say, okay, we were set at each other's throats as a cheap political stunt to try and get Hillary Clinton elected. It's time to let that go away.
Yeah. We also have to do a lot of work in terms of real education in our inner cities and make sure that kids whose families maybe don't have a lot have a really excellent education. I mean, I'm 67. I say that very honestly. And I was so lucky to have been born to the parents I was born to on many levels because they stressed the value of education. They stressed the importance because in looking at me when I was a very small child, it was very obvious to them that it wouldn't be my face that would be my fortune, but that I'd have to learn to actually do something.
Beautiful.
Well, you're a sweetheart, and I love you with all my heart. But no, we have to make sure that kids get a proper education. As many of you know, I do marketing, so I'm on the phone to various parts of the country. And in Southern California, a lot of times, and this is not about people who've come here from somewhere else, I hear the English that's spoken, and it's pretty darn broken. You know, I can sort of decode what they're saying on the other end of the phone, but with great difficulty. We have to fix that.
It's Ebonics.
Well, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be an holistic process.
Yes.
Okay. We have to bring back the industries in order that we know what we need to teach our children in order that they will have jobs in those industries in order to be able to buy homes and fuel the economic system. Mm-hmm. I wish it was as easy as saying if we change this one thing, everything else will fall into place.
It's not.
Although obviously abolishing the Federal Reserve would be a good start in that single point solution. Mm-hmm. But we're going to have to heal this nation across the entire nation all at the same time. Fix the infrastructure, bring back the factories, bring back the manufacturing, bring back healthy agricultural produce that the rest of the world wants to buy. I mean, they've now announced the Trans-Pacific Partnership is now officially dead. Mm-hmm. That means our government can't arm twist these other countries to buy our GMO produce. Okay, so if we want to be able to export agricultural products to other countries, we'd better grow what those countries want to buy and not what Monsanto wants us to force them to buy.
Yeah, I mean, Russia's got it. Russia's completely banned all GMO products. And they're turning out healthy food that other countries want to buy.
And they're buying it.
Yeah,
and they're buying it. And meanwhile, America's farmers are shipping cargoes of corn to China, which is also non-GMO, and it's getting shipped right back. Yeah. Because they've been so reckless with all of this technology that even farmers who think they're growing natural organic corn, their fields are being contaminated. And Monsanto tries to sue them for patent infringement when it should be dealt with as an industrial accident.
Yeah, it's completely the wrong way round. And by the way, speaking of Monsanto, did you know that Obama signed the Monsanto Act?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And wasn't it one of his campaign promises that he was going to get this GMO thing under control?
Yeah, but there again, you know.
But I don't think Obama is going to be able to protect Monsanto from all these civil lawsuits that are coming on up.
Right.
And okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the final segment of our show after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our last segment of our show on this Pauhana Friday. And just to kind of sum up, what a week it has been such a roller coaster. But what Claire was talking about before, this idea of the safe space, that you're in your little protected liberal bubble and everything's going to be what you want it to be, and if it isn't, you can go and cry. I think that actually is a big part of the problem with Hillary's supporters. Because all during this year, during when the DNC was sabotaging Bernie Sanders and throwing the nomination to Hillary Clinton, she and all of her supporters just had this unshakable sense of inevitability that it was going to happen the way they wanted it to.
Not only inevitability, but entitlement.
That's right.
That was what made it so grating and irritating, honey.
Yeah, this entitlement, it's mine, it's my turn, we don't care what you voted say. And when I was talking about that psychic shock when you get out in the real world, I think it just happened. And it happened to the people on Hillary's campaign. It happened to her supporters in liberal universities across the country. And it certainly happened in the corporate media, which, let's be honest, is for the most part very liberal themselves. And they were not mentally prepared to deal with it. And that's why we're still seeing all this whining and crying and trying to find some way they can warp reality back to what they have decided it ought to be. And they're not really coping very well with Trump's election victory. But overall, I'm seeing the amount of whining and crying and screaming in a steady decline across the corporate media. And I think people more and more are accepting that Donald Trump did win the election. Now that Newsweek's, Hail Mary hope of a tying the electoral votes is now rendered impossible by Arizona certifying for Donald Trump. I think we're going to start seeing things start to tone down. Certainly the number of people who are at these anti-Trump riots are in decline. They're still violent. They're still out there putting out a very ugly public face of liberalism and the Democrats in general for America and the world to see. There have been a lot of arrests, 135 people arrested in Los Angeles alone. But I think we're probably going to see that start to fade over the weekend, and it's going to calm down. Is Soros ready to give up? No. Is Hillary ready to give up? I don't think so. But I think that a lot of people are probably now putting pressure on Hillary to just go quietly into private life, because if she keeps pushing at this, it's going to start breaking open aspects of the government that nobody wants to see broken open. And so we'll see what's going to happen on that. But my sense of it, just kind of a gut call, is that the anti-Trump let's steal the White House for Hillary furor is dwindling and fading fast, and I think by Monday it will be a memory at best. So, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. We're going to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back here on the Republic Broadcasting Network on Monday. So have a really good weekend, and try and be gentle on all those brainwashed people who still think Hillary was a good idea, and we'll be back Monday. Aloha, America.